We are Picking Brains, the Zombie Battleground podcast brought to you by Loom Network. This is episode 1, guaranteed not to have any Jar Jar Binks. I'm Robert Guy, your content and community manager, and here are your hosts, Zombie Battleground game director Roy Shapira and content creator Extranji.
Hey there, Zombie Battleground fans. Welcome back to the first official episode of the Picking Brains podcast. The guys over at Loom got back in touch with me and said they wanted to do this recurring interview series with questions from the community, questions about game interactions, mechanics, design. So, welcome back, Roy.
Oh, hello. How you doing?
Doing all right. You doing okay today?
Fantastic, as always. Every day is an opportunity to make awesome things.
Definitely. So I've got my new list of questions here, so we can just jump right in here. In the last interview, I discussed Distract with you, and my question that time was specifically about how it interacts with types, which actually left a few people confused about how Distract works, because in the alpha right now we don't actually have any cards that use it, so we can't test it out and see how it works for ourselves. So we had some people wondering if Distract only operates on types. So to be clear, will Distract clear things like death effects, persistent abilities?
Yes, Distract will basically null the ability of a zombie. So anything in the ability window, in the text window of a zombie, will become void. Everything it had until then is gone, including the type ability. So for example, if you have a heavy zombie, part of its ability is heavy. So it will stay a heavy zombie, sure, but it's...
Yeah, Robert was talking a little in the Discord how types have abilities associated with them, but they are their own thing separate from the type. So if you distract a heavy zombie, it's still heavy, which is interesting to me. That wasn't what I was expecting. And so as a follow-up there, we've got this card Earthshaker in the client with an entry ability that destroys a heavy zombie. So if you distract an enemy heavy zombie, will you still be able to destroy it with Earthshaker after it's been distracted?
Yes. The Earthshaker's ability acts on the type, not on the ability. So even though the heavy ability is gone, it's still a heavy zombie. It's still like a large zombie. Try to picture it in your head, just like a heavy zombie, and you whack it with a distract, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? It's like he's not defending actively anyone, but he's still a big heavy zombie.
Yeah, that makes sense flavor-wise. Cool. So then next, there's been some active discussion in the Horde Assembly channel about card balance, card design. So we talked about design in the first part of the interview before, but I wanted to ask specifically how much math is involved in card design. Do you have stuff like numerical values assigned to different abilities like Feral and Freeze? So it's like, oh, if I give this zombie heavy, I have to take away this specific number of stats to make it balanced.
That's a pretty good question, and actually very close to what I'm doing. If I give a zombie heavy, I will remove at least one attack, if not one attack and one defense. But usually it will be in exchange for exchange for one attack. If I give a zombie feral, it will be in exchange of one defense. So because ferals are more fragile and they would have less defense. If I give someone freeze, they would take probably one or two attack. If I give someone destroy, it will be one attack and two defense. And so it's very varied, but this is only up to a point. At a certain point, when I see the card, it goes into kind of like a creative gut feeling thing. So this feels like too powerful. This feels too weak. So I kind of change it according to some sort of a gut feeling. And then, of course, all of that process is still a guesstimate. It's like an educated guess. Only when we start playing it in the game itself and start feeling the card, how it really behaves, then we can give the final balance round. Then we can change it a little bit. Maybe it's too powerful, maybe it's too weak, maybe we need to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah,
like that.
in my experience with other card games, it's definitely hard to evaluate a card just by looking at it. It definitely takes some playtesting for sure.
Yeah, exactly. You after a certain point, so in the beginning, yes, it's math, and then it like there's a gut feeling phase, and then there is obviously testing it out in the game itself.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Next, I've been playing a little bit with the life horde in the alpha, and I've noticed one thing that's happening right now. I'm not sure if it's a bug or not, which I wanted to clarify is can you give reanimate to a zombie that has already died once?
First of all, yeah, it's not an on-off. You can stack as many as you want. It's like either you have reanimate or you don't. But when you do reanimate, it's a fresh zombie. So you could definitely bestow reanimate again. That's not a problem at all. It's a new zombie. You can give it reanimate. Reanimate is the ability to get it to respawn after it dies. So if it respawns, it's a new zombie. Give it again, it will again respawn after it dies.
Yeah, cool. So I'm imagining some interesting life decks that just focus on reanimating one zombie over and over. He never leaves the field. That could be funny to see.
That is exactly the idea of the life faction, and that's the basic idea of the synergies between it. It will be very pesky. It's kind of like really hard to get rid of them, but that's kind of why they're a bit weaker than the other zombies. Same with the air faction. They have guards, so they're a bit weaker stat-wise.
Yeah, that makes sense. In a similar vein with this life action reanimate stuff, when do zombies enter the graveyard? And I'm asking specifically from the perspective of the life general Yggdrasil, which says it reanimates zombies that have died this game. And so I'm wondering if zombies go to the graveyard when they're played, or if they go to the graveyard when they're died. So if, say, you play one life zombie, and you've only played this one life zombie, and it's still on the board when you play Yggdrasil, will it be reanimated if it hasn't died?
That's a pretty good question, and going into a very, very specific corner, but props to you for getting this question. Yeah, so there are two checks. First of all, the graveyard, every card that goes above the arena drops a battle frame and continues into the graveyard. The graveyard is for cards, not for the battle frames. So basically, once it drops the battle frame, it continues into the graveyard, right? But Yggdrasil will not reanimate anyone who has not left the arena itself. So if you have just the far out scenario that you're talking about, right, if you only had one life zombie before Yggdrasil, then it will only reanimate it if it left the arena. So Yggdrasil, it summons back the zombies that actually died. So the battle frame needs to be removed from play for it to be considered for the reanimate.
I see. What can you tell us about what's coming in the next patch? Are we going to see some new cards? Are we going to see some changes? People are really excited to get their hands on some of the new cards that we've seen.
That is a great question. So basically, right now we are actually in the midst of a feature freeze. That's when we stop development in favor of polishing and feedback. We make sure the gameplay is smooth, everything works properly. There's no crashes. There's no anything outstanding. Everything works according to the design and all that. And in the end of the week, we are going to get the new version, the new patch, and it's going to have 147 cards working in game, and it's going to be pretty awesome. We're gonna have lots and lots of rebalanced cards. The Fire faction has, dropped from grace, so it's not as powerful as it was before. Fire faction has become crazy strong with all the feral and the goo carriers and all that. Goo carriers, if we're talking about that, have changed a little bit. Now all of them from all the factions give you either tainted goo or corrupted goo, which means you can actually use it only on the next turn. And part of the reason is to have all the faction sort of get the same amount of power. Some became a bit more powerful, some became a bit less powerful, but the idea is to have the idea in balancing the factions to be about equal strength and weaknesses is to not have the one specific deck that everyone will play. And we'll have a variety of cards, each one with their own, each player with his own deck, and we'll have a bunch of meta decks that will be featured, but it will be from all the factions rather than just one faction. I mean, it will be kind of boring. I remember a time long ago in a galaxy far, far away when I played Hearthstone and everyone was playing Zoo Shaman, and it's like every time you go in, it's like Zoo Shaman. That's it. That's the only game you play. Zoo Shaman. It became so repetitive that I just at one point said, forget it, and just that took like a week or so.
Yeah, the
break from the game.
The Tunnel Trog, Totem Golem, Flame Wreath, Faceless meta.
Yeah, exactly. It was like everyone had like just one deck, and that's it. And I'm trying to avoid that, and the way to do that is to kind of rebalance all the factions to have same kind of power.
That sounds
in general. Good. Obviously, each faction has their own unique angle to things. Like we talked about the live faction, it's going to have its power is coming from the reanimate. It's going to be very pesky. It's going to be very difficult to actually remove a card from play. It's going to be reanimated again and again and again. And the fire factions are going to be really blitzing forward, trying to charge in with a bit lower health, but more zombies running at you at the same time. But the most interesting things that I see are kind of like a two faction hybrids. So kind of combination of toxic and earth together, or fire and air together, kind of synchronizing their strength and weaknesses. There's like half of the deck is kind of like aggressive attack, and half of the deck is like defense, and you have like a kind of a synergy going there. These are the most dominating or interesting decks that I'm seeing.
Yeah, cool. I think that's going to be really neat. I'm super excited to play with all the new cards and see the balance updates, and I'm sure a lot of us in the Discord are. But I think that's about it we've got for time. So thank you again, Roy, for all the insights, all the answers. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And we're going to be very exciting. Lots of changes in the next patch expected by the end of the week. And obviously, open beta is looming very, very soon.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Picking Brains, the Zombie Battleground podcast. We'll be here each week with hordes of content around the game's design, gameplay mechanics, strategy, and more. You can download Zombie Battleground from our website at loom.games, and then shuffle over to the official Discord for some great conversation around the game. Of course, you can find these links in the show notes below. So until next time, keep building those armies and fighting those battles, and zombie on.